The Alliance for Child Protection in Humanitarian Action is the interagency body for ensuring the quality and effectiveness of efforts to protect children in humanitarian settings. It has produced a video series on the minimum standards for child protection in humanitarian action. These minimum standards, also known as the CPMS, were developed through widespread interagency collaboration. They are part of the Global Humanitarian Standards Partnership, which includes Sphere, INEE, and others. This video examines Standard 15, Case Management. For other installments in the series, please go to the Alliance's website. During humanitarian crises, children face increased risks of violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Emergencies both exacerbate pre-existing protection concerns and create new ones. Case management is a core response to address individual children's situations. It is a process of working with the boys and girls who are the most vulnerable in that specific humanitarian crisis. It involves collaborating with actors in other sectors, as well as concerned communities and local authorities. We focus on these children and families to address their protection concerns and to build on their strengths and abilities to help themselves. The Case Management Standard says, girls and boys with urgent child protection needs are identified and receive age and culturally appropriate information, as well as an effective multi-sectoral and child-friendly response from relevant providers working in a coordinated and accountable manner. To support the implementation of the standard, interagency guidelines and a training package were developed at the global level. Amongst other things, they lay out how in each setting child protection actors must assess overall risks to children and establish vulnerability criteria according to their context.
So basically, you have to sit down together with the other agency, look at what is the situation that created let's say the impact on children, and define who are more vulnerable. Also assessing and looking at what are the possibilities of the interventions to respond and the capacities in place.
When we have, for example, a massive influx of refugees crossing the border, we need to have those criteria in place. Otherwise, caseworkers might be completely overwhelmed with the number of children at protection risk, and they won't be able to identify those who would be requiring urgent assistance. And that means that a lot of children would basically face further exposure to harm.
Each new individual case is assessed against the agreed vulnerability criteria to determine if there are risks, and then if action is needed, and how quickly.
Not all cases require the same degree of speed or level of response. How we do this is by looking at the criticalness of the case. Certain cases expose children to harm. Some cases are life-threatening.
Meet our imaginary character Omar, who is 14 and living with his family who fled their home 6 months ago. He misses his old life enormously. Here, he has many responsibilities for his 3 younger siblings, and his parents are always arguing. Their tent is small and there is never enough food. His father's temper is explosive and he has hurt Omar repeatedly. In fact, in the last few months, Omar spent 2 nights on the street because he was afraid to go home. Omar recently joined a vocational training program, but when there is break time, he prefers to be alone. The violence against Omar is a case of physical abuse. In any setting, it would automatically meet vulnerability criteria and need immediate action. Let's hear directly from Omar.
One night, my father was so angry that he pushed me and I hurt my leg. The next morning, I could barely walk. It hurt so much. My teacher took me aside and asked if I would like to meet someone who might help me with my problems. I agreed because I didn't want to be kicked out of the vocational training program. I was a bit nervous meeting the lady for the first time. I didn't want to get my family in trouble. She told me she was a caseworker and asked me about myself and my family. Sarah was really interested that my favorite sport was football. After a few meetings, I felt she understood me and was listening to my opinion. She asked if she could speak to my mother and teacher to find other ways to help me and my family. I took a few days to think about it and decided she could. She also asked if there were other people in my life who I trusted and who could help to protect me. I told her to speak to my uncle and one of the boys in my class. As the weeks passed, I started to enjoy my time with Sarah. She listened to me without judgment and always tried to get what I said I needed.
In this assessment phase, the caseworker also met with Omar's parents to hear about their situation. She developed a case plan with Omar and his parents that outlined actions at different levels and assigned responsibilities. It included a safety plan for him to go to his uncle if he didn't feel safe at home, and more engagement with his peers and teacher. She linked his parents to a local economic livelihoods program and engaged them in parenting education.
It is not just identifying and providing services to children, but also that it's an action that requires you to develop relationship with the child, be accepted with the child and the family. Usually when you're working with a child and their family, it's important also to recognize that the community can play a role.
We also need to take the child's opinion into account. So basically the process for best interest determination is at the heart of the case management, because you're identifying what are the needs, what are the capacities, and how do we respond to.
Identification of strengths and needs is also done at the macro level. Emergencies can be an opportunity to strengthen the national and community-based child protection system. In some settings, this requires consideration of the specific situation of refugees and IDPs.
We often say that emergencies are often opportunities to build back better, and I think in this case we have a similar situation. Many countries don't have a case management approach, which is crucial even in development context for a child protection system. So it could be an opportunity if we build in an emergency setting a case management system. From the start, we should look at building the system so that it's sustainable and it remains as an element strengthening the child protection system even after the emergency has passed.
The beauty of the child protection minimum standards for case management is that they are complementing the UNHCR guideline. For instance, when we did develop the practical guidance on child protection case management in Lebanon, we combined the set of principles that were laid out in the child protection minimum standards and in the UNHCR BIT guideline to ensure that child protection intervention could be adequate to the refugee situation in Lebanon.
The best interest principle is at the center of the case management process and should guide all our discussion and actions. By building caseworkers' skills and attitudes in applying this principle, we ensure that we are not harming children or their families. In addition, a child safeguarding policy and a clear code of conduct help us respect the set of principles that guide child protection.
Initially, I didn't trust the worker to keep what I told her private. I was also worried about being stigmatized if I was seen with her at the training school. What would my friends think?
If there are no codes of conduct in place, there could be unethical behavior, and some of this could be inappropriate relations with the child, either too much time or physical contact. In some extreme cases, there could be abuse. They could also be a series of behaviors like not respecting confidentiality, sharing information inappropriately, and even engaging in re-victimizing behaviors.
Ethical considerations in the case management process call for a reasonable caseload, ideally no more than 25 children for one worker, ongoing quality capacity development, and regular supervision from a trained colleague.
There are different types of supervision, like the case management team meeting or weekly meeting. There are the individual case management meeting with the case workers. It's important for the supervisor to do these meetings to ensure that the quality is good. Each case worker have a load of cases, and she or he work in a complicated situation, and each case worker needs support on this to ensure that the assessment is clear and the case plan is met the needs of the children and the families. And these meetings are good to exchange the experience between each others and to see the different views for the cases.
In the end, I worked with Sarah for 6 months and the situation did improve slowly. Things aren't perfect, but I feel safer at home and my parents were less stressed. I'm still going to the training program and I've made some friends there. I'm more hopeful about my life and I feel confident about dealing with problems.
Other installments in this series focus on how to use the CPMS and on the specific standards for addressing needs. The Alliance provides support for applying the standards, such as mainstreaming briefs, guidance on contextual adaptation, and training packages. For more information, please go to alliancecpha.org/CPMS.